Alrighty, here we go. So, alrighty, today my name is John Carlos Sanchez, and today's going to be the first lesson of auto mechanics. So this is just going to be a brief introduction, and we're going to be talking about stuff such as the combustion chamber and the engine block. Inside this little guide that you have here, you'll see a checklist, and as we go through, you're going to want to check that just to be sure that we went through everything, alright? And just know that if you have any questions, just please hold them off to the end of the lesson, and I'll be happy to answer them for you, alright? Okay, good. So here we go. Alrighty. So, as we said, we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about the engine. So if you turn to another page in your guide, you're going to see a illustration of a simple V8 engine. Now what that means to be a V8 engine is that the piston layout is configured in the form of a shape of a V, 4 on each side. Now there are several different types of engines that we probably won't be able to go through, and such include the steam engine and jet engine. But what we're mainly going to be talking about is internal combustion engines, like what you see in a car or in a motorcycle. So, if you go to, you're all on the page where you see the V8 engine all apart, right? So in that, we're going to be going through we're going to be going through some of the basic parts of the engine. And as we go through them here, you're going to want to write them down in each one of those spots. They're numbered. Alright? Alright. So number 1. Am I deaf or are you all not speaking up? What is it?
Valve cover.
Good. Now what the valve cover is what the name, exactly what the name implies. If you see in the little image there, you see the valve system. The little piece of plastic or metal that covers it is the valve cover. And that is just there either for cosmetic appearance or just to keep them safe from dirt and dust. Alrighty, number 2.
Valve assembly.
Alrighty, now the valve assembly, in which we will go through in more depth in another lesson, is what exactly controls what goes inside the engine, like the amount of air and fuel, and what comes out of the engine, the exhaust. Alrighty, number 3.
Block.
Alrighty, now what the engine block is. The engine block is probably the core of the entire engine, and is the most simple part. Alrighty, 4.
Crankshaft.
Alrighty, come on, louder.
Crankshaft.
Good. Now the crankshaft is what is on the bottom. Now what that does is that it converts the reciprocating motion or the up and down motion from the pistons into the the rotary momentum that turns the wheels. Number 5, oil pan. Now that is exactly where the motor, as the name implies, that's where the motor oil sits in order for it to circulate through the engine to keep it cold and lubricated. Number 6.
Camshaft.
Alrighty, now the camshaft is what controls the valves and is linked up to the crankshaft by a timing belt or chain. 7.
Pistons.
Alrighty, good. Now the pistons are the things that you see in the movies going up and down, where the explosions happen. Number 8.
Head.
Louder, come on.
Head.
Good. Alrighty, now the head is exactly what sits on top of the block and creates the sealing of the combustion chamber. Number 9. Come on, people.
Main bearing.
Good. Now what the main bearings do is that they keep the crankshaft in place from rolling around and going loose. Alrighty. Now what is the combustion chamber? The combustion chamber is exactly where the explosion happens. As you see here, the piston is also the bottom of the combustion chamber. The head up here is also the ceiling and houses the valves. And the way that it works is that the engine has a simple 4-stroke system in which once it goes down, the intake valve opens bringing in air and fuel. The second stroke, when it goes up, is when it compresses that air and fuel together and ignites using something called a spark plug. And now stage 3, when it goes down a second time, is when the actual boom happens. That's where you hear like that vibrating noise from the engine. That's the combustion chamber going off really fast. And stroke 4, when it goes up a second time, is when it's pushing up the exhaust. Or the smoke that you see coming out of the tailpipe. And if you go to the next page, you're going to be seeing if you go to a couple pages, you're going to see an illustration of the combustion chamber.
The parts.
The parts of the combustion chamber. So once more, what is number 1?
Head.
Good. As we said, the head is what holds the valves and prevents anything from leaking out of the combustion chamber via the top. 2.
Block.
Once again, the block is the heart of the engine. 3.
Combustion chamber.
As we said earlier just now, the combustion chamber is where the explosion happens. Number 4.
Combustion chamber floor.
Good. Now the combustion chamber floor is also the top of the piston. And as I said, it continuously goes up and down as the engine runs. Number 5.
Piston.
Good. As we said, the piston is what actually goes up and down. 6.
Crankshaft.
What?
Crankshaft.
Good. Alrighty. As I said, the crankshaft is what actually changes the motion from going up and down into a circular motion, which is what propels the car's wheels forward. Another example of the crankshaft would be the pedals on a bike. Because as you see, our legs would be the pistons in a bike.
Very good.
Because that's actually what goes up, and our legs go up and down when we pedal a bike. And those pedals are actually what moves the wheels, the back wheel on a bike forward. Okay, now the block here, now there are several different configurations for a block. Either inline or V, or rarely something else. These other eccentric models include something known as a W configuration, which is in a very popular supercar known as the Bugatti Veyron. Now what we have here is an inline or straight configuration here, which is usually 4 or 6 cylinders, like in my dad's Fiat 500. Now that has a straight 4 system, pretty simple and pretty efficient at the expense of power. Now the V system up there isn't very efficient, but it's extremely powerful, and you usually see it in a lot of sports cars. Now, we're going to be going through several different parts of the block. Alrighty, number 1.
Block.
What?
Block.
Good. Alrighty, now as we said, the block for a straight 4 usually includes either 4 or 6 cylinders, each in a straight line. And they are designed to go up at different times. Number 2?
Head.
What?
Head.
Good. Alrighty. As we said in an earlier topic, the head is what... Alrighty, I'm going to ask you this. Since I already told you, what does the head do? Come on. Does anybody know? Come on. Any takers? Yes, Nat?
It covers?
Close. It actually covers the combustion chamber, but it houses something. What is that thing?
Oil.
No. No. It's the top of the combustion chamber, but what sits inside of the engine head? No, the valves. The valves are actually what you see inside.
The valves.
Good. Alrighty, number 3.
Block V8.
Good. Now the block V8, now that V8 system has either 4, it can have 6, 4, or rarely more. And it's each configured in a V format like that, with an equal amount of pistons on each side. And is usually offset by 1 here and 1 there. So you just see a staggered pattern. 4.
Cylinders.
Now the cylinders are actually the holes you see inside of the engine block, and that's where the piston sits inside. However, the cylinder is also the walls of the combustion chamber. Okay, to further elaborate and illustrate my points, we have a little video here that I hope you all will enjoy. It's 4 minutes long, so don't worry. It's not going to be too long and you won't fall asleep. Alrighty, roll the video!
A car engine generates power from the expansion of compressed air in a contained cylinder with the help of fuel. That is why it's called as an internal combustion engine. Before getting into the working, let's see the main parts involved in the working of an engine. First, the crankshaft. This is the part which converts the linear motion of the piston to a rotational force. Next, the pistons and the piston rods. The pistons will be pushed down by the expansion of compressed air and turns the crankshaft. And the valves, which controls the flow of air and fuel into the cylinders. These valves are driven by the intake camshaft and the exhaust camshaft, and the camshafts are driven by the crank itself using a timing belt. There will be idler pulleys and a tensioner pulley to hold the belt tight in place. This here is the internal structure of a 4-stroke inline-4 cylinder DOHC engine, which is commonly found in most hatchback and sedan cars. A 4-stroke engine should pass through 4 different strokes to complete one cycle to produce power. They are intake, compression, power, and exhaust stroke. The crank to camshaft ratio is 2:1, which means it will take 2 crank revolutions to complete one camshaft revolution. And the camshafts are designed in a responsive manner to open or close based on the corresponding strokes of each cylinder. Let's take a look at a single cylinder and see how a 4-stroke engine works in detail. In order to ignite the air-fuel mixture, a spark plug is used. This will ignite the compressed air-fuel mixture with the help of an electrical spark. We will take it down by each stroke. The intake stroke. The inlet valve opens and the downward movement of the piston creates a suction. This pulls the air-fuel mixture into the cylinder. Once the air-fuel mixture is in the cylinder, compression stroke begins compressing the mixture. At this time, both inlet and outlet valves stays closed. At the end of compression stroke, the air-fuel mixture is ignited by the spark plug. The explosion exerts pressure and pushes the piston down. This is the power stroke which produces power to the crank. At the exhaust stroke, the outlet valves opens and the piston pushes out the burned gas. The cycle starts again from intake stroke, keeping the engine running and produces power. For a carburetor engine, the air and fuel are mixed inside the carburetor assembly and fed to the cylinders. In the case of a fuel-injected engine, the fuel is injected into the intake manifold, or directly into the cylinders. Since only a power stroke produces power, you may wonder how the engine turns continuously. Well, the answer is in the crank itself. The flywheel and the crank counterweights provides momentum, which keeps the crankshaft from stopping immediately. For a 4-cylinder engine, considering any time instance, one cylinder is always in power stroke, which produces more power and less vibrations comparing to a single-cylinder engine. And that is how a car engine produces power in simple. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.
Alrighty. Now, as I said, that video wasn't too long, was it? Okay, good. You still here with me?
Yeah.
Alrighty, on a scale of 1 to 10, how many are you on a 5 in terms of following me? With a show of hands, tell me. If you're at least understanding this in a scale factor of 5, raise your hand. Alrighty. As for some of you who aren't really understanding me that much, believe me, once we go through later lessons, it will become much more clear. Now here, Force and motion. Car mechanisms such as gears, like the transmission, or like pulley systems inside of the timing system actually reduce the force and or energy needed to drive them. So what would normally take like 4 power strokes to move a car once would only take 1 or 2 with the help of all this. And some mechanisms change the force, for example, like some mechanisms inside of the engine change the force, like the type of force used inside. Some examples are the reciprocating motion to a rotational motion, like the crankshaft. Now, what is linear motion? Linear motion is when the block moves only once, just one position once, that's it. Reciprocating motion, like the pistons, moves forward and backwards continuously until stopped. Rotating motion. This is actually what spins, for lack of a better word, and to put it simply. This would be like the wheels or the crankshaft. And now I have a model here that I would pass around, but it will be a lot easier at the end of the class. You can come in up here and then try it out.
Sure.
So this right here is an example of a piston. The crankshaft, the piston goes up and down as each stroke goes. So it takes 4 strokes for the actual engine cycle to be complete. And as you see here, as the piston is going up and down, the crankshaft spins in a circle. Sort of like a bike, as I said. Now, I know this class seemed a tad bit short. It's just the beginning, alright? But it has a lot of information. And I would like to end it off in a very special quote from somebody who I've always looked up to. The present is theirs. The future for which I really worked is mine. Nikola Tesla. A very brilliant scientist. So already. Now since we're at the end of the class, does anybody have any questions that I'd be happy to take? Don't be shy. Really? Yeah?
What type of engine is in a Cadillac?
Well, that would depend on the type of model of the Cadillac. Like for a normal sedan, it would have an inline system. Or very rarely, a V6, which is more commonly found in SUVs and pickup trucks. Yes?
I didn't get a cab last week, so I have
We didn't have a class last week.
I mean, like the open house. I didn't.
Oh, you weren't?
I was there, but I didn't get a paper.
That's odd. But don't worry. As I said, things will become more clear as I go through, okay? Trust me on that.
Okay.
Nat?
What type of engines in a 2005 Cadillac DeVille?
I'm not honestly sure. I'd either take a guess with a V system, I'd say a V8. Yeah, it's a V8 system. Usually fuel injected. Yes?
What type of engine is in a Ram minivan?
That's
Ram minivan. Oh, like a Dodge Grand Caravan. Probably a V6. Alrighty. Yeah, bro?
So, since it uses a spark plug to ignite the emissions in the pistons, does that mean if a car battery dies, you can't drive a car?
Yes, that's exactly what it means, because most of the voltage from the spark comes from the battery. However, they actually say that the reason it requires such a big battery to start it, like to have in a car, is just to start it. That's why most of the voltage is needed. But once you start the car, it can run on a basic AA, or very rarely without a battery. It has enough power to produce it on its own, just from the alternator. Any other questions? Yeah?
How many car batteries are in a semi?
It would only be one, because a car doesn't really need so many batteries.
For a semi-truck.
But a semi-truck would probably have 1 or 2, maybe. Yes?
What's the most common engine in like an ordinary car?
That would have to be an inline, straight 4 or inline engine, which is, as said in the video, comes in most sedans and or hatchbacks. They're very efficient, but their horsepower rate is not very good. Yeah?
What is the biggest enemy of the engine?
Well, that's a multitude of factors. Wear and tear, sand, dirt, actual sabotage.
Anything that keeps it dirty.
Oil, it can be very helpful, but it can also be very dangerous if something happens known as a crack.
Right.
God forbid, when the engine block cracks, it can either crack outside, like that, it's fine. Check engine light will go on, you pull over. However, if the engine block cracks inside of the combustion chamber, you need to pull over immediately, for which it can become very dangerous. Yes, actually yes.
Yeah.
How would you know?
How would you know? I was gonna say.
I've seen several videos in which people have made the mistake on pushing their engine too far, and the heat actually forced the engine block to expand and crack, and leaking oil inside of the combustion chamber.
Will they know if they cracked on the inside or no?
Well, the check engine light would probably go on, would turn on, which is like that little light you see in the dashboard that looks like the shape of an engine.
Smoke and
And then you'll probably smell a lot of smoke inside of the car.
What causes a block?
A lot of heat, because you know, hot gas expands, right? Same thing here. Even though the engine block is usually a very crudely made piece of metal, usually casted, made out of iron and or aluminum, it still is very viable to that. Which is why it's always good to keep your engine in check. And if you suspect there's such a thing, always call a mechanic before you actually do anything. Yes?
How long can a car go off of oil?
Well,
Without having oil?
Well, it depends on the type of car and how much you use the car. But usually I'd say around 3 to 6 months before having an oil change.
Let's say if you know how the cars and you know how to oil change a car, can you use the oil when you change the oil? Can you use the oil to fuel up your car?
No, actually no, because oil is very crude versus versus gasoline. Gasoline is designed to go into the engine. If oil were to go in, it would be extremely bad, because oil is actually more explosive than flammable versus gasoline. Any other questions? I'll be happy to take one more. Yes?
I've heard that the changing of your oil is like the lifeblood in your body. That
Exactly.
You don't change your oil on a regular basis and you don't relax and it's...
Exactly. That's exactly how it is. Changing the oil is sort of like getting a blood transfusion. Because if you're not very careful on how long you've used the car and how old the oil is, it could rust the engine and break it. Just like the blood. If you aren't very careful on what you eat or such, your blood will clot. Same thing in the engine. The oil will clot. Any others?
thank you.
Yes? Yeah. Oh. Did you pass it down? Yeah. We're bringing you.
We only learn how to change oil in this class.
Yes, I will teach you how, but we won't actually do it. Because as I said over in the orientation, I don't want to risk anybody getting hurt or risk any insurance money.
Not getting their hands dirty at all?
Pretty much. And I have told a disclaimer at the orientation stating that before you do anything to your engine, always consult a good mechanic on what you should do.
So, I have, this is just throwing out, I have a lawnmower engine
All right.
that's just sitting by itself. Would that be beneficial to take apart and show pieces?
Actually, it would be very good. Actually, that would be a good idea. If you could bring it, that would be very helpful.
You just have to cover the table and...
Yeah.
So you're just gonna tell me when you wanna do that, and maybe at the end of your
Yeah.
sessions, and then you can review by pulling it apart?
Exactly. That's a perfect idea. Thank you very much.
Study.
Alrighty, so if that's all the questions, I will see you all in 2 weeks. Please study the material because at the end of each section, we will have a test to find out if you actually learned this stuff. Don't be afraid, there's not going to be any grade or anything, don't worry. It's just for your own personal growth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will see you all in 2 weeks.
Good one, bro.
And the model is here if you want to see it